This is Good Morning San Diego.
Hey, Governor Gavin Newsom vetoed the bill that would require an ethnic studies course of high school students.
Coming up, educator Mark Powell will join us to share his thoughts on the governor's decision to veto the bill, why he says it's a good one. Governor Gavin Newsom unexpectedly vetoed a bill Wednesday to mandate a course in ethnic studies as a high school graduation requirement starting in 2029. Joining us now to give his position on the governor's decision to veto the bill is educator Mark Powell. Good morning, Mark. Good to see you.
Morning, Lauren. How are you?
Well, normally we talk with you because you're a member of the San Diego County Board of Education, but this op-ed that you wrote in support of the governor's veto is simply coming from your perspective as an educator.
That's correct, and I'm not representing the board on this, but I do plan on bringing some of these points up in a future meeting because it's really important.
So critics on the other side of this issue would say, hey, at a time when our racial tensions seem to be so high across the country, ethnic studies as a requirement for high school graduation would seem to be a good thing. But you point out what?
Well, I can tell you why it's a good thing to have an ethnic studies curriculum, because we do need to represent our African American, Latino American, Asian American, and Native American students. They need to be better represented in school, but mandating it and making a graduation requirement could prevent a lot of students from graduating, because we know that 2 million students in California do not meet minimum standards in reading and math. So throwing another requirement on them that requires reading is gonna help. It's gonna prevent students from graduating, not help them.
And I would also just mention that I spoke a week or two ago with Tyler Gregory, who's the executive director of the Jewish Community Relations Council of San Francisco, and he pointed out that if we're going to teach about inclusivity, then we should be inclusive of all minority groups. And he pointed out specifically that Jewish history was just completely overlooked and it was not mentioned whatsoever.
Well, not only that, while Arab Americans were very represented in this curriculum, a lot of other ethnicities were not represented or marginalized. For example, Coptic Christians, Chaldean Catholics, Mizrahi Jews, Assyrians, Armenians that are in the news right now. I would suspect that many of the students couldn't even find Armenia on a map. We need to make sure that all of the people are represented. All of these cultures need to be represented at least at part in this new ethnic studies curriculum.
Well, it would seem that the governor got the message because this is now the second time that it has been sort of revised and brought back to his desk. And he apparently agreed that, hey, we need to reevaluate this because we're not including everybody in this who should be. So where do you think this should go from here? And do you think that there is an opportunity to still provide some sort of ethnic studies for our high school students? This was just not really the best way to do it.
Okay, at the core of this discussion, we have to determine whether we want politicians out in Sacramento to legislate what educators should be doing throughout the state. I believe that we should allow local control and let the individual school districts determine if they want to implement an ethnic studies curriculum, and if they do, how they want that curriculum to look like. We don't need to be legislated by Sacramento on what we need to do to educate our students. We need more local control, and through local control, we're going to better represent our parents, our teachers, our students, administrators throughout the state, and especially in San Diego County.
And so on October 9th, you wrote an op-ed on this expressing those views. What's the feedback been?
So far, it's been real positive. Look, we all know that we need to have an ethnic studies curriculum, but mandating it, making it a high school graduation requirement when we don't even know what's going to happen in the future. Look, COVID-19 has set our kids back at least 7 months, according to some studies, and it's set back kids back, African American and Latino students, back anywhere from 10 months to a whole year back. We need to bridge that achievement gap. We need to put money to bring our kids back up to where they need to be, to at least to be proficient in math and English. Let's focus on the basics, and we'll move into the mandating an ethnic study curriculum when it's more appropriate, when we know what our schools are going to look like in the future.
All right, Mark Powell, thank you so much for your time this morning. Appreciate it. And certainly we'll follow up on this topic, as I'm sure it's going to be addressed again.
Thank you very much.
Absolutely. Take care.